I'm Elisa Mortensen, and this is Undo Redo.
Hello, friends. How are you all doing? Anyone need an emotional check-in? Here's what's happening for me right now. I am experiencing a long, slow, and enjoyable summer already. Having spent time in Kauai with all my kids at the end of April, first part of May, then going biking in southern Utah with my husband and hiking and running trails in beautiful Eden, where I have raised my kids. I hope you're finding enjoyment as well, because you kind of have to make it happen and look for it. And that brings me to this episode today. I love the books I've read, and one in particular has transformed a lot of how I see things. It is so powerful, so simple, I have to share it with you. You can decide whether you want to go read the whole thing or not. It's called The Gap and the Gain. It's by Dan Sullivan, and his co-author is Dr. Benjamin Hardy. The concept of this book is so useful because it takes you farther than just getting out of judgment of others and judgment of yourself. The authors call it an intellectual shortcut, a quick shortcut to relationships, shortcuts to success, and it's being in the gap or being in the gain. It's the easiest way to describe how you are measuring yourself, how you are measuring your situation, and whether or not you're thinking about it in an idealistic terms, which is perfectionist. We're not really able to be perfect in this life. That leads to disappointment and misery and how it could be better. That's the gap. Or in the gain, measuring from where you were before and seeing where you are now and how much you've learned, how far you've come. And they say to ask yourself, where were you before and where are you now? What is it that you have learned? And write it down. This is very similar to my coaching program where we use only the facts of the situation. Nothing subjective, no drama. It feels better inside than all of the emotional stories that we tell and the meaning we're giving to the situation, which is typically not factual. Dr. Benjamin Hardy points out that Thomas Jefferson is known for saying the pursuit of happiness. But what Thomas Jefferson didn't realize is that he was framing our culture to see happiness as not being attainable. Being in the pursuit of happiness makes it mean that we don't have it with us already. We're not already happy. So that framing of our culture is what has been shaping human identity and what has been shaping human thinking. When we chase it externally from things outside of us, it's because we're disconnected from something internally or inside of us. We're in the gap, measuring against what could possibly be the perfect scenario. We will never fully appreciate how far we've come, how many accomplishments it has taken to get us right where we are here today. The author told stories about people setting a goal only to make a new goal as soon as they achieve the last one, and they skip the part that puts happiness in your body right then and now, that feeling. It's just always out of grasp. It's just on the horizon. We're chasing it. We're wearing ourselves out trying to reach something in the future, never allowing ourselves to have it all along. It sets it aside and doesn't allow us to have it until a later time, and that later time never comes. It makes you miserable. It makes other people around you miserable, and that is the gap. I think it's so simply stated, although they use some big words. Dan Sullivan is the one who came up with this concept. He was asked to say something to the readers who are hearing this for the very first time, and he said, all people have gap thinking all throughout the day. And it's been 30 years since he came up with this framework. He's been utilizing it. He still sees that he's in the gap several or more times a day. We don't let ourselves win. We can't do anything right. We're in the gap when we think others aren't doing anything right either. And there's a lot of damage being done when we think about what should have been or what could have been or what they should have done or what they could have done. We hurt ourselves and we hurt others when we're thinking of it in this way. His advice is to take a look at the progress we've made versus the progress we still have to make. He says in the book, identify an area of your life that you are really frustrated about and ask yourself, what are you measuring your current state with? Always measure backwards in order to feel better. So measuring backwards supports the growth continuing forward. When you measure with the ideal, you'll always feel lacking and crappy. The advice is to take a look at the progress you've made versus always looking at the progress you still have to make, to identify an area of our life that we are really frustrated about. Ask yourself, what are you measuring this with? Measure backwards, always. Measuring backwards supports the growth that you have had even in this last little while and allows you to feel like you can really possibly move forward. Measuring with the ideal or the perfect scenario, you'll always feel lacking and crappy because we're never perfect and we're never ideal. Remind yourself where you are and what you are doing and own your thinking and get right back on track. The gap will keep you stuck until you decide to convert whatever's hurting you into insight, lessons, wins, or growth. He says, get yourself out of the gap whenever you realize you're in it. And then he tells a story about a man with the last name of Jensen, a talented skater, started out every race with record-breaking speed, and then something always happened. He never won. The final event he was skating, the final event for him, the final event of his career was his weakest area. And he decided, instead of thinking about all the medals he could have won, he would think instead about how much he's gained as a person, how this journey improved his life, and how he has been skating in the Olympics, which is super exciting. He was tapping into gratitude. Overcome with determination to skate this last time on behalf of all of his love for skating and how fortunate he was and how hard he worked, all the support he had, and his way of saying goodbye to the sport that he loved, feeling joy and gratitude, he skated better than he ever had and he broke the world record. He won the gold in this final event that wasn't his strong area. And all of this happens in our mind with free will. It's our use of agency to do something different and better with it. Now, it doesn't come naturally. Decades of research has been done proving that happiness is what you start with. It's not something you get to. Finding the gains instead of being in the gap, that's what he calls it. I just think it's such an easy way to frame it. Now, it broadens your thinking and it allows you to build new resources and increase your confidence even before you have the actual evidence of having the resources or confidence. Finding the gap, on the other hand, only allows you to see all the flaws, ends up with no growth or progress because you don't think it's possible. Negativity narrows your opinions and you feel closed in on. It doesn't allow for you to come up with or to try anything new. Seeing the gains gets you out of the gap. It gives you immediate happiness. It connects you to yourself. It owns your progress and it transforms everything. It gives you the power back over your own life. They urge the reader to make a new rule for their thinking. Measure yourself only backwards. Otherwise, you'll be drained. The part I found most interesting is when he said, consider that the ideal may not even be your ideal that you've chosen anyways. And I had to think about that and reread that a couple times. Because our minds have been programmed by what other people have wanted for us, or what culture has told us, or what our parents, or our doctor, or our teacher, or our boss, or someone we admire. Think about how many things the doctors told you that's not true. Imagine hanging on to something someone said your whole life, thinking that is the ideal, or that is fact, and that's really what's going to happen, and it doesn't. It's really wasteful to spend all those years in someone else's opinion rather than your own, or in someone else's interpretation of what's going to happen for your life instead of finding your own. They can have their opinions. It doesn't mean they're right about your life. The direction it will go is whatever you're thinking it will be. You could join them in their thinking, and then that will happen. But you get to decide. You get to gather information that you need and make your own way. In 90 days, you can change everything and make your life better by pulling all the gains out of each situation and live in how far you've come, rather than seeing the worst in life or compare yourself to someone or have tragedies greater than other people's and their life is easier than yours, and all this way of gap thinking. Being in the gap is a focus on what you lack. What has been and what will be in the future will never be enough when you're in the gap. They call it the hedonic treadmill. And it's when no matter what happens in your life, you sadly remain at your baseline, which is you're comfortable with complaint, you're comfortable with unhappiness, you're comfortable with shutting yourself in, and it leaves you continually seeking different experiences like food, possessions, entertainment, those things that feed the temporary happiness, because you're not truly connected to yourself and you're not making and forging a life on your own for yourself. On the other hand, being in the gain values every one of your experiences, the desired ones and the undesired ones. Every day it's about 50-50. Half the stuff we don't even like, half the stuff we may like, some of it's just whatever. And you accept all of those experiences because it's not just a story in your brain. Gains are actual. Gains are measurable, and every experience can be turned into a gain. He talks about break your leg, turn it into a gain. Wreck your car, turn it into a gain. And I thought, okay, I mean, it's a skill to develop, right? You become bigger, you become more expanded, and so does your future, and so does your health. They spend some time in this book on explaining how everyone has experiences. We all live lives full of happenings every day. Many will have very little learning from it all. And I thought that was fascinating too, because of course we have experiences all day, every day, but really not a lot of us are learning from them. Learning is what makes us unstoppable. It measures us from the beginning, and it says, hey, look how far you've come. It allows you to become really skillful, even when you haven't achieved what you've wanted yet. To have happiness and looking forward to, and confidence that you're going to keep going until you get it. And your progress is very clear because you've charted it, you've worked it, you know it's working. It's very foundational for increasing the pleasure of living and enjoyment every day. The book warns about the compound effect of being in the gap. And this made so much sense to me because I feel better at 46 than I did at 40, and I know it's my mind. He says, the compound effect of being in the gap stresses you out. It taxes your physical body, it erodes your emotional well-being, and all it is just a habit. We can spend most of our days in unhappy, resentful complaining, regretful, and criticizing in our minds. But research shows that our genes respond to stressors. The little short bursts of stress that we get, on the other side of those short bursts, we get more strength and more resilience. Like when you work out or when you have nervousness and anxiety to speak somewhere or do something that you're not familiar with and you do it anyways, there's more strength and resilience on the other side of it because your body calls up defense mechanisms that are helpful. However, prolonged and extended exposure to toxic stressors wears down your body. It shortens your lifespan. Every time you choose fear, worry, or panic, it causes a micro trauma in your system. And over time, all of those add up to a lot of hurt. The reverse is also true. It has been shown that optimistic people who decide that things will work out, feel hope, they're engaged in their life, thoughts and their actions welcome all experiences. They can see, how does this improve me? Whether it's a good experience or a bad, it evolves them into a higher, more capable version of themselves. By putting themselves out there more often, they gain knowledge and experience that they can do bigger and better things than they ever thought were possible. They can overcome so much. Those who decide to shut in, they're in the gap, shut down, fear, worry, avoid, and you stay in a state of the panic and tension, it causes you to break down. It weakens your ability and erodes you away. That's a massive difference. Makes so much sense. This next statement in the book is really great. The people who live longest do not base their happiness on how long they will live. They live long because they, moment to moment, frame everything as a win. Life is helping them along the way, and life is giving them more. I love that. They're not framing it as taking away or being too hard or seeing themselves getting worse and it's going to be horrible, and then they're more suppressed and feeling picked on, or like they're the exception and everyone else has it. They're just not making more for themselves. It's a choice. They're choosing gap thinking. And we need to see this in ourselves so we can create a better forward so we can create better days ahead for ourselves. In chapter 3, they tell us about some tests that were done to show why it matters, whether we're in the gain or the gap. They took a group of people and they injected them with a virus, a doozy from what I understand. The ones who rated high on the survey for enthusiasm, optimism, and positivity, the ones that always point out what's going well, they look forward to their days, they have wins, and they look forward to their days ahead. They had little to no objective symptoms. And the ones who rated skeptical, critical, felt that it was important to point out all the problems with everything in themselves, in others, in processes that other people and companies had. They complain a lot, they blame things, they were very negative. Those people in the gap, they struggled with this virus in their body. They suffered big symptoms. They also had it in their system days longer. They said almost a week with some of them. The virus was in them working even longer. This next test that I'll tell you about was done with house cleaners. They measured and weighed them. They told half of them that the work that they do each day has many health benefits and it met the basic requirements for a healthy lifestyle. They gave them examples how. They made sure to tell them that they will have benefits and increases in their well-being and in their strength. After months went by, they brought all the cleaners back and they took their measurements again. And the group that received the helpful information experienced significant improvements, including reduced body pain, increased muscle mass, a healthier and improved mindset, weight loss, overall better health, and job enjoyment. And the other half had experienced worsened pain and more weight gain. I just think this is fascinating, and this book is such a great one. The last test was with a very large group where everyone was given a shake to drink, and their blood was drawn multiple times to track how hunger would show up in their body after they drank this shake. Half the shakes had a label that said it was a lighter, lower calorie shake. The other half was given a more dense, high calorie shake. Even though everyone drank the same shake, their blood draw showed that those who believed it was a filling shake had no sign of hunger in their system. The others who believed they had a lighter, less filling shake were very high in hunger, which shows how powerful our minds can be in creating what happens in our body. I thought it made so much sense how your mind can filter your experiences that would then shape our emotional and then our physical responses. It literally is affecting how our body metabolizes through. How you interpret events, movement, food, and all decisions that are happening all around you all day determine the impact of stress and illness in your body. In other words, the book says your perception shapes your biology. And he also says trauma is a framing of an event, because two people can experience the very same thing and the one will say trauma and the other does not. So this has just changed a lot of the way I think in my mind when I'm noticing that I'm in the gap. I can try to question myself and come back around to how is this working for me? What can I get out of this and what can I learn? They go on to say, if you are in the gap without restraint or without self-correction, it has a tangible psychological and physical effect. We've all felt it before, right? Being in the gap is really heavy. It's anxious, it's stressed, it's unhappy. The game feels light and energizing and freeing and kind of like some confidence. An interesting take that Dr. Hardy brought out was, he says, people with low emotional maturity are super sensitive and prone to breakdown if there's any unfairness. I thought, how many people are like, that's not fair? I can literally hear children in my head saying it. He gives the antidote. It's gratitude. Grateful people do not stress over fairness. They see it as help for you to appreciate what's yours and what opportunities you do have. They're like, no, this helps me appreciate what I do have. Gratitude keeps people from becoming overly reactive or fearful. And instead, they learn from their experiences, they welcome growth, and they like change. The author has you get out a notebook and write down the last time you threw a fit because you didn't get something you wanted. And possibly what you wanted became something that you felt like you needed to have, just desperate to get. He explains the difference between a want and a need, which was really helpful for me. The reality of your life is based on what you give your attention to. The compliments or complaints, health or illness, fairness or inequality. You live with what you see, what you choose. Nobody else to blame but yourself. The author suggests writing 3 wins. He says, get out, have a notebook by your bed, write every day before bed 3 wins for the day, and write 3 things you will accomplish tomorrow when you start your day. When positive skills get stronger, they don't allow room for all of the negative skills. Those negative ones just kind of start going away. And the opposite is true. The up cycle and the down cycles are real. The negative skills get stronger. There's no room for positive ones. So you can steer every day with tiny routines and habits and make one or the other happen for you. And another thing they say is never ever talk about what should have happened. It's a waste. He said the more that people have gotten to know him in his business, and he owns a lot of teams and a lot of people, he says everyone knows you can't be negative around him. It's he calls it a psychological virus, and he says that it can be spread over and over. And once you're in the positive momentum, you no longer support the framing that creates ill feelings and heaviness that breaks people down and has people not showing up at their best. You become measurably healthier and more successful, and it eliminates the need to be negative that creates the environment for everyone to be well with you and well around you as well. He says he's created his own little happy atmosphere. Now, back to how. How do you get in the gain? You measure yourself backwards. We are all capable of more than we know. You can look back and see the ways which you have grown, which you know you have changed and adapted and are coming along. This makes us think, it's working, I'm getting there, or I'm much better than before, and that fills us with hope. And hope is what gives us the energy needed to keep trying, to keep gratitude with us, to move forward and do it with belief. And repeat that same pattern. Regularly finding this process is the key to being able to push through all of your challenges, whatever you may face, and become strengthened by doing it. Your brain has evolved to see the gap. So if you're not recording your gains, you'll forget and you'll revert and go back to the gap. You really need to be intentional. Now, this one, he says, really brings up a lot of pushback. Our present thinking gives meaning to the past. That means the past doesn't mean anything, right? Our present mood affects our memories. Every time you bring up a memory of the past, it's a reconstruction. He says when you draw on your memory, it's done by your present self. You forget what you were struggling with at the time, and you forget where you were too easily. The creator of the Gap and Gain in this book has had many people come to him very upset about the idea of being able to change one's past. They're like, it can't be done. What was done has been done. It is what it is. And he says not only can it be done, it is meant for us to do, to keep evolving to our higher and better versions. So we better always be changing our past. So I've already kind of done this. If you want to go back and listen to the 2 stories, 1 reality, I have shifted into a place where my past now serves me instead of hurting me. But to be accurate in how we see things that happened in the past, you need to keep a journal. Because where you are now today, when you recall that story, you measure from where your thinking is today. And we've all evolved. We're not the same person we were in the past. So it will help your current thinking to not forget what kind of a state you were in back then. That's the way to get in the game. You can remember all that you've become since then. You are not that same person now. What you do know now, you didn't know back then. He asks us to get out a notebook at this time and write down some of our biggest accomplishments, all the lessons we've learned, and to be very, very specific with it so our brains can see that we win quite a bit and that puts us in the game. What do you say yes to nowadays that you used to not say yes to? Or what do you say no to nowadays that you used to say yes to? He says, be really specific. Don't be general at all. I know I'm less reactive. I have more intention towards who I want to be for my kids and how I show up for my husband and my special needs sister, my business. I show up so much better and I'm so connected. I'm full of energy and focus and I feel unstoppable. Dr. Hardy says you are not growing enough if you aren't embarrassed about who you were before. We should be kind of like, I can't believe I did that because you're so different. He says, write down some of your gains in the last 90 days. How have you evolved your thinking? What lessons did you learn? What are you proud of? And measure your progress. Don't compare, don't compete, always measure from yourself. Always measure backwards. This really got me thinking. People so often do get stuck in what happened or thinking that that's what will always be. And they don't think about themselves as becoming any different or being any different than they were just 3 months ago. Our minds can see it the same, even when all the evidence points to nothing being identical. We'll still think we're the same. Both the creator and the co-author say there's a profound and liberating freedom that comes with acknowledgement that the way you remember things, you made up. I'll say that again. Both the founder of The Gap and the Gain and the co-authors say it's very, very important and very, very freeing to just acknowledge that the way you remember things, you made up yourself. It didn't actually happen the way you think it did. You made it up. And you make up what it means right now. And you make up what it will mean in the future. Which brings us to chapter 4. He says, you are always framing things in comparison with something. It's either with the ideal and your suffering, or it's with how much you have learned and grown, which keeps you in freedom, wellness, agency, and supports your growth. We do need to be in a routine of pointing out to ourselves our progress and our wins, what we've gotten good at, things that we do well, because the opposite is too easy to default to. Most people stay there. There's a low morale, low energy, low movement, but start each day with progress. What have you really done? If you're in a health building and winning mind, you don't start out back at 0 every morning, or as a victim to all sorts of disruptive conditions from the world and blame on what other people have done to you. Those kind of gap thinking, those people are never free. They never get to be anywhere else. They could be on vacations and filled with opportunity and wonder all around them, and they will still feel struggle the whole time because they keep those destructive gap thinking thoughts with them the entire time. When they're resting, they're gap thinking. When they're enjoying vacations, they're gap thinking. Why go anywhere or do anything different? It just doesn't seem fun for them because no matter where they go, they keep this like poor me, victimized gap thinking with them, and nothing's enjoyable. The co-author and the author agree that it's a contentious issue and that people get really mad when you tell them that they can change because they really are used to their gap thinking. And they're nothing without the gap because they don't have any gains. They truly believe you're robbing everything from me. But we get to decide what it all means. What we make things mean right now today is our reality. Who says you can't change what happened? You own it. You own your perception of what happened. Who says you can't change it? But when someone in the gap big enough has a ginormous meaning to their past, and they're trapped in that justification and they're holding that anger, and it's been so long now, they feel like they're nothing without that sad story. They've got to show everyone that they've suffered and tell everyone that they're suffering. They have no meaning in their current day, in their happiness, if they don't have that. And that's just being in the gap, and that habit so big. These authors who are experts are bold enough to say that they will prove to anyone who hates their condition, anyone who hates their life, anyone who doesn't like what's going on, they'll prove to them they're in the gap. And chapter 5 says your eyes will always see, your ears will always hear, and what your brain is looking for. Dan Sullivan. what you do the hour before bed, how the book closes is by framing what you do every night the hour before you go to bed. Most people are distracted by entertainment. They're binge eating, they're watching things, they're on their phones, and it's all that really precious time right before bed. They're highly happy, well-balanced people at the end of their day are more highly happy, well-balanced people at the end of the day are being more intentional than that. They're getting ready for bed, they're prepping things for the next day, but behaviors are self-signaling. So what you do is what you become. If you're a person that doesn't get high achieving and can't create your mood and doesn't like movement, then that will be what you see yourself as. I'm not very creative. I just kind of don't like to work out or move my body. It just hurts so bad. I just can't. Or that becomes who you are. So behaviors are self-signaling. What you do is what you think you are, but you're actually not what you do and you're not what you think. You're what you intentionally decide. They say when you go to bed with a plan, you wake up with one as well. But when you go to bed without a plan, you wake up without one as well. So how do you spend your sweet spot hours, what they call it? He nudges us to write down 3 wins daily and 3 wins for the next day. Maybe you had more than 3. Maybe you had less than 3. He just wants you to be intentional. You're the one that's telling the story about your life in your head. You design your day. You get to wake up with purpose and not spend all that precious time and just kind of settling for what you've always done. You get to train your mind to focus on what really matters and experience what you'd really like to. So train yourself what you'd like to look for and start practicing. As with all things, you get better with practice. I used to get annoyed about things. Like I was afraid of so many things. I would measure what I was doing. I would count things that didn't count. I would discount things that should count. But my performance improved when I knew exactly how I was progressing, when I started writing things down more often. He suggests you even find a success partner to celebrate your wins with and to increase your accountability, to get you motivated. He says momentum begets momentum, but reactivity begets reactivity. Avoidance begets avoidance, wins beget wins. We kind of get where he's going. It's so simple. We reflect, we plan, we keep track, and we change. It's like learning to drive. It was hard at first. You had to kind of think about it. And one day you're like, how did I get home? At the end of this book, you really have a choice to make. And they call it out. They say, pick 3 wins for tonight. Pick 3 wins for tomorrow. If it's hard for you to find wins, decide what is a win for you. Learning from failure is important to winning bigger. If you don't know what losing is, you don't know what winning is. So it's just really important that you decide what success is for you and you're either winning or you're learning. Chapter 5 talked about how many people in the concentration camps and those who have had some torturous living conditions have even turned those into a gain. And the others were depressed when they entered there and saw no getting out of it, and they died so quickly. But the ones who saw the opportunity to transform their experiences, they survived the worst conditions, the same conditions that others would die in. But they lived to tell about it and lift and inspire others. Chapter 6 tells us you can transform anything into a gain and to take ownership of your past. It says, when you are in the gain, you are proactive. You become adaptive. When you go into the gap, you are powerless, victim, and you have no ownership over any experience. You're not finding ways to utilize them to improve your future. The gap takes away your agency as a person. It makes you psychologically rigid, which has higher anxiety, inability to learn, higher loss of memory, poor work performance, and you're no longer in touch with your own emotions, and you end up with long-term disabilities. If you're really in the gap, these are the things that show up. So I just think it's so important that this is out there. But in the gain, you're psychologically flexible. You have more important things to work on than think about yourself all the time. You manage your emotions. They don't damage you. Even the terrible experiences become a springboard for growth. You decide your rules are yours, and you are the driver in your own life. Frustration turns into measurements forward. And even when setbacks occur in your life, you're not losing. Being more flexible instead of rigid means you can move through and control the meaning of your experiences. The more flexible you are, the more willing you are to find new approaches. Gap people entertain themselves away and live in pain. They live in pain of the yesterdays and the tomorrows of life. If people love every moment that challenged them, instead of seeing every moment as hurting them, they would never change their growth for pain-free experiences. They would rather have the pain and the growth from it than sit nice and easy and comfortable and have no growth. There isn't meaning in things unless we create the meaning. That's the whole point of this book. Whether it suits us or it doesn't suit us, it hurts us, it doesn't hurt us, it holds us hostage or it doesn't, we get to decide. And I love this because this is what I live for, is giving people back their agency, showing myself. I get coached too. How can I have more agency in this situation? I'm held back in this and in these ways, but I definitely can go infinitely in these other ways. We make our own personal rules on our own timetable. We can turn them from reactive to proactive. In 1984, George Orwell said, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." And Chuck Palahniuk said, "Your past is just a story, and once you realize this, it no longer has power over you." I thought those were two really great quotes. The creator of the Gap and Gain made a tool to take an experience, any experience you have, and extract learning and lessons from it. And us as humans can analyze and derive insights. However, for many people, they're experiencing things and they're not learning things. The experience transformer takes place when you are in it and you feel the intensity and you turn that into innovation, breakthrough, and forward momentum. You can get out a notebook and you can write any situation. What about it worked? What was useful? What could you get from it to learn from and use in your future? Can you learn about something that you don't want again? Can you find something that you're grateful for? And what has it shown you? That's what he challenges us to do. By doing this, you take full ownership of what you decide things mean and what they don't mean. That is being in the game. You don't compare your experiences with anybody else's experiences. You're creating ongoing trauma for yourself if you're using a story, one of your stories, for gap thinking, and you're feeling worse as a result. The more you transform your experiences, the more confident you can feel that anything negative or jarring that comes up in your life that you can handle. What are you doing now that your former self couldn't do before? What are you creating right now that your former self could not have created? A disorganized and dysfunctional past is one that you just didn't take ownership of and that you haven't given proper meaning to. Making it humorous instead of tragic could be a way to get it into the game. Revising it to be a happy thing for you instead of a sad thing would. And how we approach it or avoid it depicts whether you can move on from it or not. People in the game can honestly say they are grateful for any experience that has happened to them. And there have been some pretty horrific things that people have experienced. Finding the benefits from tragedy and getting growth out of the challenge is very powerful. In order to have post-traumatic growth, you must be in the game. You have to actively frame tragedies to give you better and greater strength and power than you had before it happened. You have to be able to have the skill to get value and usefulness out of it. Growth and meaning and purpose for moving forward and creating a bigger, better life for yourself. When you don't take the time to do this, instead you'll be avoiding these times in the gap, and it will have a negative and destructive effect. If there's anything in your past or anything with you currently that hits you, then it means it's still there. You haven't yet transformed it into those massive lessons. So when you're in the gap, you're passive with your tragedy and you're seeing yourself as a victim to it. It decreases your abilities and it holds you hostage. If you want to be anti-fragile, then you need to train yourself to become increasingly winning and increasingly learning and never losing. Never frame in your mind that you're losing. This is how it's done. Turning every experience you have into a gain helps you move forward in an informed and in a grateful way, and you see the bright side, and it feels like the bright side instead of seeing the heavy side and it feeling like the heavy side and having those compound emotional and psychological and physical effects of it. The situation that happened that you didn't like, you default to never thinking about it. The proactive way is, I will not be controlled by this. I will look for and get out of what I want to get out of it. I will have power over my own life. It doesn't have power over me. It's up to me whether I'm passive or not. You don't have to do something, but you can use your agency for yourself and save yourself. You are not responsible for everything that happens to you, but you can choose to be responsible for processing it and learning from it. And what happens after the event is up to you. You get to think it through, you get to make it a skill, or you get to fall to the effect of it. The game uses agency to operate from your experiences instead of your experiences operating on you. I loved it when it said that. You can categorize them and use your agency or not. You can take what you're doing and measure backwards. You can think you're failing or you're moving forward. You get to choose. Every day we choose what will be. You're the driver in your life. I'm the driver in my life. It shows up the way we decide. The brain can go further into whatever you're rewarding it with. And it likes repetition. So reward it with being right about your opinions about the doom and gloom and illness, or reward it about being right about getting better, becoming healthier, being fitter, and transforming your past into something that you win from day to day, moving on forward. We're to the part in the book where they say, we are at an all-time high in the history of the world for things that people can be bothered by. All the bothers shared by all the bothered people, they aren't seeing the wins. They're complaining, they're comparing, they're criticizing, they're pulling others into their worst behavior. They're showing everyone else their worst behavior. The worst is put up against someone else's best over and over and over. This book invites you to, whenever you decide to live your choices, measure your own progress from where you were before. You will stop seeing all the stuff that was once bothersome. Start seeing yourself against yourself, not yourself against everyone else or your brother or your sister or your cousin or your friend. The habit of the gap is literally a refusal to grow up. You always want to make others responsible for your issues, others responsible for upsetting you. You will find that you have no self-progress at all, and maybe you can't even see it. It's just because you're not taking agency over your own life. If that person is you, there's lots of tricks in your mind going on about how to avoid being responsible. But if you can own it and say, this is what I choose to do after these things happen. These are my results. These are my choices, and I put myself right here. You will see phenomenal freedom. You will start to have growth in your life. None of the excuses you have for not taking care of yourself work nowadays. We're all free to choose, which is the scariest thing for us humans, actually, because we feel we must blame something if our life's being messed up. But if you still think you're not in control of your life, then you're still a victim to it. And the book calls you right now to own what you're doing. Ditch all your illogical reasons that came from fear. Quit hiding from reality and that story in your mind that convinces you to keep all of your pain. None of it's real. He says, what will you choose? Will you notice when you feel crappy when you're in the gap? Will you find a real lesson and something you can take with you that makes it better or easier next time? And he closes with, your use of agency is the answer to a full life of confidence and ease and learning. And in my opinion, and in the author's opinion, that is success. That's what I have for you today, friends. Go read The Gap and the Gain if you want to get all of the nuggets. I pulled a lot of it out, but see what comes up for you. Take notes and make it work for your own life. And if this resonated with you, share it with someone you thought of. Surely you had someone come to your mind and you had thought of someone along the way. Share this with them. That is how heaven reaches us, and that's how we are transformed into better versions of ourselves. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.